Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lifestyle Engineering Podcast, where we interview interesting people who found what they love and who live unique lifestyles. Today's guest is Sarah Wells, who is an Olympic 400-meter hurdler, so she jumps over obstacles. And in this conversation, we're going to be discussing the following. We talk about how she found the passion for this sport, her experience going to the Olympics, and how she's transitioning away from her athletic career and how she is building entrepreneurial adventures right now. Enjoy.
Hey, my name is Sarah Wells. I am an Olympic 400-meter hurdler. I am the founder of an entrepreneurship group called the Leadership Lounge, and I'm super pumped to be here.
Yes, and we're just talking about coffee. You said you were an avid fan of coffee. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with coffee. When I go to sleep at night, I'm like, first thing I'm thinking about is, oh, I can't wait for coffee tomorrow. I just love it so much. And I think the reason why I'm so obsessed with it is because when I was in training, I actually wasn't able to drink coffee because I would take caffeine pills when I raced. So I wanted to stay as sensitive to the caffeine as possible. And so my coach would never let me drink coffee, but I really loved the taste. And so now that I'm newly retired from sport, I am a coffee enthusiast where I'm just drinking coffee every chance I can, just so delicious, and I love it.
You're still getting the effect because your coach asked you not to drink coffee for a reason, probably because the baseline goes down.
Yeah, exactly. Because he wanted me to stay as sensitive to caffeine as possible. And so because I would take those caffeine pills when I raced, we wanted to save my ability to be sensitive to the caffeine for actual race day. And so now that I don't have to worry about that, I can have that tolerance kind of run wild.
Yeah, that's amazing. And do you pop a caffeine pill before? I know that you're a big fan of peanut butter and banana sandwich before competing. How do you take in caffeine before competition?
Yeah, so when I was first starting to try to make the Olympic Games, we were experimenting with a few different things that would help influence the kind of ability for your muscles to contract quicker, your ability to actually endure more pain, because 400-meter hurdles, which is my event, is a very painful event. And so we were experimenting with a few different things. Caffeine is one of those things that helps dampen pain as well as cause neural firing to happen even faster. So I would take a 200 milligram caffeine pill before my race, only about an hour before my race. And that would help me get into the zone, even mentally. I'm sure, we've all felt that. If you drink coffee,
Oh yeah,
it just refines your focus. You're just suddenly far more into it. And so that would help, just mentally and emotionally getting into the race. And then two, I knew it was going to help me physiologically, from a perspective of dampening pain and also increasing my ability to fire my muscles a little faster.
Have you seen this documentary called Icarus? And they talk about how there's a lab of scientists that are experimenting with different substances that cannot be detected in the current state of things. And then I think,
who has it?
Yeah, it's just a very famous documentary. Me being from Russia, I can believe whatever is happening there. But also, it's fascinating that it seems like in Russia they just do it in the open, and in other places they might not. Can you tell me if you tried any, or if you experimented with any, of course, legal substances, or with maybe food, nutrition, sleep? What's a good preparation to perform your best?
Yeah, so I was on the anti-doping testing pool for Canadian athletes since I was 15 years old. So taking any banned substances was a hard no, because if I got tested positive, I would have been instantly kicked out of sport. And I knew that my goal was to try to make the Olympic Games. And so at no point was that part of anything I was willing to do, because it would have risked everything. So obviously, we just tried to play with the things that can improve performance that are allowed. Like you said, like sleep, like nutrition, like caffeine, all of those things. There's a lot you can do for yourself for just refining those ingredients. And so we played with caffeine, as I just mentioned. And then for performance with performance nutrition, I worked with a nutritionist that we would work through kind of, okay, through years and years of training, I had a few data points around what would my ideal percentage like ratio between functional tissue like muscle mass, things like that, and non-functional tissue, which is things like fat. And while it's considered non-functional, it is very functional. You need it for hormone balance. You need it for being able to regulate kind of like energy. I would experiment with performance and food nutrition and performance nutrition. I would work with the nutritionist. We had so many different data points around what my body fat and muscle tissue and that ratio would be. We would know what weight I'd want to be at. And the most important thing that I want to stress here, because anyone who's, looking for high performance with like using nutrition, it's a slippery slope and can be really dangerous to play with if you aren't working with experts and aren't working with like healthcare practitioners who can watch you through that. Because sometimes even just having a certain like weight in my head of like, I want to be this weight when I'm racing can be really dangerous, because a certain weight doesn't necessarily mean an increased performance, because that might be too much, like you might be too lean. You don't have enough muscle tissue to actually be able to like do the performance or race that you wanted. And so really removing a number out of your head and having a collection of data points allow you to know like when you feel your absolute best. And so that way you work with the experts to like make sure you never cross that red line, which can be really easy to accidentally fall into. We'd work with figuring out those numbers, knowing what I needed to be at.
Coming back, I've started this interview with asking you about peanut butter sandwiches, and you dove into nutrition and a lot of things. But I would love to learn your journey. You said you started being tested for doping from the age of 15, but can you tell me when your journey started, where you grew up, where you're from, and when was the first moment when you realized you wanted to commit your life to a specific area?
So I really got started because I really wanted to like join a sport and be good at some type of sport. I wanted community, I wanted friends, I wanted every high school student is looking for belonging. And so when I showed up to high school, I tried out for every single sports team possible. And I tried out for basketball, volleyball, track, soccer, badminton, like literally every single team. And I got
How long did you try for?
Like as a freshman, like ninth grader, every single sport, like every month I was trying out for like a new sport. And I got cut from every team until track and field came, because track and field doesn't make cuts. And so that's the only way that I ended up like getting onto a freaking sports team. And it was actually, and I only went out for track because track is near the end of the school year, right? Like it's like once the springtime comes around, because I live in Canada, I grew up just outside of Toronto. And so it had been so many teams of getting cut that I was like, I'm just going to stop trying out for sports. Like I'm just not athletic is really what the answer is.
Yeah. How did you handle the rejection? Did you try out just by yourself, going into the trials, or were you with anybody else? Did anybody encourage you to keep going?
Yeah, luckily I did have friends who already I kind of had like one friend in all the different sports. And so it's like if someone else was going out for the team, I'd go with them. Then I would get cut, they would make it. Then I'd go for another team with a different friend, like they might make it, I get cut. Then I go for another team, and there was a year when there was maybe 5 of my friends, we all tried out for volleyball, and like 3 of them made it, and then like only me and one other girl didn't. And so it was just this like, oh my gosh, like they're all going to get to hang out at volleyball all the time, and I'm just going to be over here like, the loser. And I think more than anything, the thing that helped me like keep pushing forward was just this kind of like pursuit of belonging, and wanted to find like, it's not volleyball, like, okay, maybe it's basketball, like, okay, no, it's not that, like maybe it's soccer, like. And it was early enough into my high school career that I didn't have anything to live up to yet. It wasn't like, when you achieve something and now you're known for that thing, that if you don't do it again, now you have like a sense of loss, or you feel like you've been demoted, or like people won't respect you
And
as
the
much.
environment is telling you that you're doing something wrong, but you're so good at athletics.
Yeah, exactly. So luckily it's like I had never been good, so there was no expectation from myself or others. And so I think it made it less frightening to fail again because there was no expectation. And
Do you have athletes in
um,
your family?
yeah, so both my parents were athletes, never professional level, but they also got married and had children really young that I think they'd never even had the opportunity to see where that was going to go if they did. And I have two older sisters. One of them who was she was very athletic. She was really good at a lot of things, but she never specialized in one thing. And then my next sister, there's three girls and one youngest boy. And so my oldest sister was the one that was athletic, good at everything. My next sister, who was closest to me, her only sport was shopping. Like, she did not care for sports. And so I think, even just having that proximity of a sibling who, someone was good at sports, someone wasn't, like, it just gave you permission to almost fall somewhere in that bandwidth. And so when I was moderately good or not good at certain things, I had the, I guess, role modeling of it not meaning that you were any better or any lesser. It was just like, you could fit anywhere between that spectrum. And so I think that really helped having that foundation from my family, that, you didn't have to be good at sports to be worthy, and you didn't have to be smart to be looked at as someone they would be proud of, or that was like very loving and like very kind of like foundationally like accepting. So
And you mentioned you grew up with many siblings, and you also mentioned that you were looking for belonging. Can you tell me how that relationship was? Because I feel like right now we're living in this loneliness epidemic where a lot of people are having a harder time connecting with each other because there's social media, there's so many walls. How did your relationship with your siblings look like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I
It's your careers now.
anyone who knows me knows I'm like constantly obsessed with talking about my siblings because they are one of the best parts of my life. I grew up really, really close to my siblings. And when I say belonging, I guess it's not that I didn't feel like I belonged in my family. It was more that I wanted the same sensation or closeness with a group of friends that I had with my family and siblings. And so with my siblings, I had, like I said, there's four of us. There's my two older sisters and my one younger brother. And my eldest sister, when she graduated high school, she is 8 years older than I am. So when I was 10 years old and she had graduated when she was 17 or 18, she went away and did a exchange, well, not an exchange, but like one of those programs that's called One World. And so she went down to South America, and she worked in some very like impoverished parts of the continent, and she became like a third parent to these families that were really struggling. And I'll actually even say struggling is maybe not the right word, because they just had like a different set of circumstances. Because what they weren't struggling with is a sense of community. Like, she came back and she saw how important the world of like having a sense of community was. Like, these families were surviving because they had three different moms, like as like someone they could look to and talk to, and they had this like group community where like someone takes on this responsibility, someone else takes on that responsibility. And so she just saw the importance of being there for one another. And when she came home from that trip, which lasted like just under a year, she came and implemented like a lot of that philosophy in our family at home. And so, when she's 18 and I'm 10 years old, and my elder sister is like, okay, we're going to do something just the siblings, like just the four of us. And I'm like, oh my God, she wants to hang out with me. Like, this is the best day ever. We'd all want that of our older siblings. And so we started having these siblings days once a month where my sister would really like make the mandate of like, we're going to go and do this all together. And because my older sisters treated me like that, I treated my younger brother like that. And we just grew up like, I don't have a lot of the stories where people talk about like fighting with their siblings to the point like being super mad at them. Like,
of course we had arguments. Of course we got frustrated with each other. Like, wasn't this like flawless life? But like, I really don't have any true memories of like despising my siblings, because of this precedent my eldest sister set. And so that was my relationship with my siblings. And that has continued like through my whole life, because every milestone moment that I've had in sport, like in school, like in my personal relationships, like my siblings have been there for me. And I would do anything for them. Like the second they needed me, like regardless of what's going on in my life, like nothing is more important than them. And so that was my relationship with my siblings. And
you're so lucky to have a sister like this, and it seems like you feel very warm towards her. And having that support at the age of 10, I can imagine, gave you a lot of courage and to pursue your passions.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think, and it's, you know what, no one's ever asked me this question for me to connect the dots like this, but I feel like this is like a groundbreaking revolution right now for me to realize that maybe that sense of belonging and support that I had at home is what enabled me to kind of like blind faith fail over and over again, because I just had this like incredible sense of support and structure back at home. And so that's just a really cool thing you've helped me come to realize right now.
Wow. I feel like a therapist right now. I'm just kidding.
I know, right?
This podcast is about learning people's stories and seeing how they find meaning, fulfillment, how they live interesting lifestyles, how they feel love and belonging to the world. And only, like Steve Jobs said, only looking backwards can we connect the dots. And oftentimes having an external person see those stories, those moments, they can kind of puzzle it together, because we live with kind of within our own reality, and oftentimes not seeing the forest for the trees.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And it's really interesting. And I think everyone needs that, like you said, like third party influence to almost rise above, whether it's your relationship, your business, like your moments of like depression or feeling down, where like it can just, you're so immersed in the concept or in the feeling or sensation that you simply can't rise above and kind of look at it unbiasedly. And so it's always good to have those people that you can find in your life, and grateful for this conversation today for sure.
Yeah, me too. I'm super excited. I'd like to get back to the moment when you tried different sports, and track was that one sport from which you couldn't fail, right? Because they didn't cut people. Tell me the story. Tell me the first day on track or any memorable moments. Did you feel like that was your sport?
No, I did not feel like it was my sport right away. Like I knew that I was fairly decent at running, because the only good thing I had going for me in the other sports that I tried out for that I got cut from was that I could like run to the soccer ball, get there, do nothing with it, but then like run, like pass the ball and then like run up to the goal line again. Like, and so I knew that that was kind of a strength of mine, but I just never thought about it like in isolation, it being a sport in itself. And so when I showed up, the high school teacher that had told me, he was like, you need to come out for the track team. He, on the very first day I came out, was like, here, I want you to jump over these hurdles. And I was like, this is embarrassing. Like, I don't really want to, like, what is this weird sport? Like,
did you feel scared though? Like when I see hurdles, I'm just like, I'm going to fuck myself up. That's my first thought.
I mean, it certainly crossed my brain, but luckily he like let me warm up to the idea, because he put the hurdles, there's these things called breakdown hurdles, which aren't the real hurdles you see on the track at the Olympics or Pan American Games or anything like that. They're hurdles that are kind of like these little metal X's that you can slide up or down to be higher or lower. And so he made the hurdles really nice and low, very manageable for me to get comfortable, like leaping into the air while sprinting. And so we worked on that for a little bit. And to be honest, it kind of just made running fun. I was like, oh, wee, like jumping over these things, you know? And
did it feel challenging?
Well, like I said, he made them nice and low, so that way it wasn't a challenge yet. And then slowly we raised the hurdle higher and higher. And to be honest, I can't remember my first fall over the hurdle, whether it was a few practices later or whether that didn't come until my first race or something. It certainly didn't happen in my first race because I would have remembered that, but like an early on race or something like that. But I don't actually remember my very first fall, to be honest. But I know that I would have like smoked my knee on a hurdle, because when you do like your lead leg, you have your trail leg that comes around. And when you're moving in full speed and you jump over a hurdle, when your knee is coming around as a trail leg, like it can smack the hurdle and make your whole like bottom half of your leg go completely numb, because you like hit the nerve underneath the kneecap and you're like, like I can't move. And I remember the first time that happened, and I like scratched up my knee and made that nerve pain like zing down, and like suddenly like I'm like limping back to my coach. I'm like, ow, oh my God. And all he did is he looked at me and he was like, now you're a real hurdler.
All right. Cool.
Exactly. So yeah, certainly I'm sure I was scared, but he made it progressive enough that I was able to kind of like work up towards the level that I needed to be at to actually enter a race and jump over hurdles.
Did that coach give you a personal preference in certain ways? Did he coach you one-on-one, or did he treat you like everybody else on the team?
So originally I was just part of the high school team, and he was a high school teacher. And so I was just one of the many kids who came out for the track team. And certainly, he was coaching everyone. But I think the biggest thing that I am grateful and so appreciative of him for is the fact that he never let me doubt myself. He really encouraged me and other athletes as well. Like, he honestly was such a cheerleader for many of us. But he just said, like, Sarah, like, you can be good at this. Like, you can be good at this. Like, keep working hard, keep training. And like, I really see potential. And he really believed in me before I ever believed in myself. And I think his like, just like unwavering support around that, like, even like, I had a bad race. He was like, all good. We're just keep working towards this. Like, you're going to be good at this. Like, you're going to be good. You're going to be good. Like, and so it was just like, he never took his eyes off of the fact that like, I could be, I don't know if he ever said like Olympic athlete at the start, but he certainly knew I could maybe win the provincial championships or maybe the national championships or something like that.
How did you do compared to the others?
So initially I was just one of the pack. Like, I wasn't standout. I was just like trying to learn like everyone else. Where I think the very first time the coach kind of knew that I was differentiated was in sprint hurdles. So my specialty ended up becoming the 400-meter hurdles, which is one big lap around the big oval track. And they're spaced out. The hurdles are 35 meters apart. But in sprint hurdles, a lot of people would know sprint hurdles better. And that's the one where they line them up, back to back to back to back to back, all down the straightaway. That's sprint hurdles.
What's the difference for sprint
100
hurdles?
meters.
100 meters. Yeah, it seems like 400 meters is really challenging because it's a pretty long distance to cover.
In a sprint. Yeah, exactly. So the 100-meter hurdles is the very first race that I tried because it's less challenging. It's an easier kind of entry point. So the very first race I ever had was a 100-meter hurdle race. And during those races, you have a favorite lead leg. So the same way that you have a favorite leg to kick a soccer ball, you have a favorite leg that you leap over the hurdle with to as your like lead leg. And so in order to be the most efficient that you can be in a race, you want to constantly be getting your favorite leg over the hurdle. So it's like favorite leg, favorite leg, favorite leg. And to do that, you have to hurdle with your favorite leg. Then your trail leg comes around and you step down. You go 1, 2, 3, and then you re-step over with your same favorite leg. But in order to keep lead leg 1, 2, 3, lead leg 1, 2, 3, and keep the same leg, it requires a level of efficiency and carrying momentum. And when you're first learning how to hurdle, it's like, we're watching a baby walk. Like, you're so disjointed and you're so like, it's just not efficient. And so often first-time hurdlers, early stage high school hurdlers, when they run those 100-meter hurdles down the straightaway, they'll do their lead leg, and instead of 1, 2, 3, they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that end up being their other leg. So they go like a good leg, a bad leg, a good leg, a bad leg.
Yeah, and it seems like you got to know the distance as well. It's in order to have the right leg at the right time. When I learned how to snowboard, and the guys at the store, when I was buying my snowboard, they said, "What's your lead leg?" And I said, I have no idea what my lead leg is. Say, okay, we're going to figure it out. So they pushed me, and I was like, one of my legs, and I was like, okay, that's my lead leg. I wonder if you experimented, or if somebody said, okay, nope, your lead leg is left, and then you try the left. How does the process look like in determining your lead leg, and have you tried switching them?
Yes. So
very specific questions.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. I'll revisit the race story because I feel like I need to wrap up that thought, or people are gonna be like, wait, but what happened? How did he know you were different? But so to find out which leg was my favorite, what he would do is he actually just set out a bunch of hurdles, just like when I was first learning, like probably back on that very first day I went out for the team, and he said, just, okay, go run over them. And so I just like ran, and then I decided to be like, okay, jump. And so whatever leg I decided to leap over the hurdle with first, I probably did that more than one time. And so he could see, okay, out of those 4 hurdles, she chose to lead with her right leg 3 of the 4 times. So she's probably more comfortable with her right leg lead than her left leg lead. And he let me learn hurdles using my good leg, or my favorite leg. But after I got more comfortable with hurdling with that leg, he didn't want me to be disadvantaged by having so much patterning towards the one leg and not have enough practice at the other leg, because then I would be really off balanced. And as a 400-meter hurdler, which is where I went to down the line, because it's a long sprint like we discussed, even though you can run with you have a certain stride length and a stride pattern that you have at the beginning of the race, your muscles are a certain elasticity at the beginning. You have a certain amount of power at the beginning because you're not tired yet. But as you get more and more tired, your stride length shortens. You're not as powerful. You're less balanced because your muscles are giving out. And so you not only hurdle with your good leg when you run 400-meter hurdles, but you also hurdle with your bad leg. And so what my coach made me do is, when I first started learning, he let me get comfortable on my good leg. But then he actually refused me to use my good leg for like 6 months. He was like, you can only hurdle with your bad leg, because he wanted to train that pattern just as much. So that way, in the points where I start getting tired and I'm run down at the end of a race, my body still knows how to hurdle with my bad leg. And that, I think, honestly, I think having that foundational training is what led me, a big part of me fast tracking towards becoming an Olympic athlete, because I had that. And that's truly thanks to him.
Yeah. And it seems like so many very specific questions, from peanut butter sandwiches to to how you chose your lead leg. Right. But it also seems like having another leg also trained empowers you to, if you make a mistake on track, to be able to still perform well.
100%. Exactly. That as soon as, there's a hefty wind and it kind of like knocks you backwards, and so you're off your race pattern, and if you didn't know how to use your other leg, you could be like, oh my God, I'm screwed. Like, now I have to keep hurdling with this leg, and like, I'm not good at my bad leg. And like, oh my gosh, this race is going to be so terrible. Like, while you're in a sprint and it's not a lot of time, it feels like a lot of time to think. And so you can end up using your bad leg, or like using your bad leg and convincing yourself it's going to be a bad race, in which in turn creates a bad race. But because I had enough comfort and enough confidence in my bad leg, that when there is a mistake or there is something that unpredictable that happens, that I can very confidently be like, that's okay, like, keep going. So it was a major player. I'll jump back to wrap up during that race. So most hurdlers go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, same leg. But when you're first learning, a lot of first learners say 1, 2, 3, 4, opposite leg. When I had my very first hurdle race, we had, of course, been working on trying to get the 3-step pattern, but I hadn't nailed it down. But when I got into my very first race, the gun went off and I was so nervous and I was coming out so hard that I actually went like, good leg, 1, 2, 3, 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 finished the race. I only did 1, 2, 3, good leg. And so he was like, I rarely see anyone be able to do that their first time out. And so he was like, we're going to keep working on this, because there's something here clearly. And so I had that rhythm. And then I went and ran a longer sprint, so a 200-meter sprint, which, isn't a 400, but it's not 100 meters. It's a bit longer, requires a bit more anaerobic and capacity of lactic training. And I went and I actually won the 200-meter race. So he was like, if I can combine your speed strength of running a 200-meter pretty well, plus your rhythm with hurdles, I can make you a very good 400-meter hurdler. And so that high school teacher and I started working together my very first year, grade 9. And 9 years later, that same high school teacher and I stayed together that whole time. And he was still my coach when we made the Olympic Games together.
What was that moment? That moment when your coach came to you and said, hey, I see something special and I don't see many people do this. Was that the moment when you realized, hey, I'm actually good at this stuff? Or was it earlier?
No, I actually still didn't believe him. I thought he was just being nice. I still was not convinced. And he actually told my parents as well. I remember after the race, my parents came to pick me up from the track meet, and I got into the car with my parents, and he came over to my dad, and he was like, you really need to put her into some full-time training. She could really do well. And my dad even jokes to this day that he was like, I just thought he wanted our money. And then even for me, I was like, he's just being nice to me. He just wants me to believe that I can do this, but who knows if I'm actually that good, And, but I decided I had no other sports, right? I had no other options. So why not? And so then I went out and I started training, and within 8 months of really seriously starting to train and be focused on that and be really committed to getting better, 8 months later was when I made the world youth team, and I went to Marrakesh, Morocco to compete on behalf of Canada for the very first time.
Do you need to pre-qualify to get to that point?
Yeah. So what ended up happening was I was training, I was getting better, I was getting faster. And over those months, I was getting my body had never been put through the kind of grueling pain, but also incredible pursuit of excellence that I was on now. And I just adapted so well. I started getting so strong. I was suddenly building mental skills that had me rise above that voice of self-doubt. And that coach continued to believe in me, and everyone around me started to see me get better. And, he would keep reminding me of wow, Sarah, look at how far you've come. And so in that time period, then I knew that what I had to do is I had to run a certain threshold time. I had to hit a minimum qualifying time. So we were practicing, training, getting ready to be able to run that minimum threshold. Once I ran that minimum threshold, then I had to win the national championships. I won the national championships, and then I qualified for the worlds. And then I went to Marrakesh, Morocco. So it was this crazy journey.
How old were you?
15.
15. That is insane. How did your work ethic look like? Because as far as I know, in many colleges, a lot of kids, they just want to hang out, smoke weed, do whatever. Right. It really depends. But in your case, how did that moment when you transitioned from just doing it, it seems like as something for belonging, to seeing a professional athlete in you?
Yeah. So after that first year of training, where I was only training with high school athletes during that time of getting to the point of winning the national championships. And after that point, my coach, he was the coach of my high school team, but he also was the coach of a university team in downtown Toronto called University of Toronto. And so when I started getting really good, he wanted to make sure I was training with people that were at my level or above my level to help continue me developing. So instead, my second year of track and field, he decided I wasn't going to train with the high school team anymore. What I actually ended up doing was helping him coach the high school team right after school. And then he would drive me after the high school practice finished. We would drive to University of Toronto, and I would go and I would train with the university student athletes. And that taught me, the university, collegiate athletes have a certain mentality. Some of them are there on a bit of a scholarship, or they've been in sport for 5 to 10 years already. And so they're really committed to their goals. They have a different mindset that they're bringing to the table. And so in my second year of track, I'm training with these people that are hard, like their work ethic is up there. They're eating well. They're making sure they're getting good sleeps. Like they're doing everything in their whole life to help them get this goal. And so when I see that my second year in track and field, like I just started to mirror what they were doing. Like, oh, if I want to be good, that's what I have to do. And so they showed me what's possible. They showed me what was important. And I brought that work ethic everywhere I went now. And I think once I saw it work too, you know, like when you do those things and you make those choices, you don't always get the outcome, the desired outcome you wanted, but you do often see progression. And because I saw that, I was like, okay, sometimes I'll get it, sometimes I won't, but it's always worth the effort because I see myself taking these steps forward. And so, you know, it became a part of me, and especially to learn that at 15, 16 years old, that was when I was developing who I was as a person. And so now it's become like part of who I am as a person. And my partner now will tell you, like, I bring that to everything I do. Like when I get an idea, I'm like up all night, like, you know, I want to like get everything done in like a short amount of time as possible. Like I'll pour my heart and soul into that thing because I just want to accomplish it so badly. And yeah, it's really become a part of who I am, but I owe that to the people who really showed me what's possible when I was first starting out.
I think the most fascinating thing about athletes is the resilience that they have, and they're just disciplined. They show up, they go through pain, and for me, when I do anything athletic, I feel so much better because it trains me to shut some of my negative thinking down a little. Then that makes me feel like, hey, I can do this. In you, did that mindset seem to be always there? Were you always kind of a go-getter, go 100%, get shit done type of person? Or did that change once you started becoming a professional athlete?
I think it's hard to remember a lot before sport, to be honest. Like when I think of to being like 11 or 12 years old, like, was I that person? Maybe, but it looks very different when you're 11 and 12 years old because you still don't have the same like attention span or like focus. You don't even have the same amount of like the same level of goal that you might have, once you're a teenager and beyond. And so I don't know if I was that person. And maybe I should be asking my parents, like, but they're your parents. So they'll probably be like, yes, you were always that person, but who knows? But yeah, I really don't know, but I know certainly that work ethic and discipline and drive was highlighted and encouraged and fostered as soon as I got into sport at 15 years old. And I think it's okay if someone I don't know if I was actually born that way. And I don't think anyone's super, like, you might be a little bit born that way, but I think I largely learned all of that because of being around those collegiate athletes, having the coach that I had, having the siblings that I did, like all of that came from like the principles and philosophy and mentality that they showed me. And so, yes, I am that person. And yes, I did exude and exercise a lot of those things, but I don't know if it's something that's just like innate, like you have it or you don't have it.
Yeah.
It's something you have to flex those muscles and strengthen that part of yourself. And sometimes you don't even know what's truthfully possible for you if no one has shown you how or what is possible. And I think that's what's really cool about the world these days, that you can find that person to show you what's possible because you don't even need to know them anymore. You don't need to be even 6 degrees separation, know them, because you can listen to a podcast, you can watch a YouTube video, you can see something on Netflix, you can whatever. And so you don't even have to like discover what's possible for yourself because you can find what's possible based on like the incredible amount of information and stories that are at our fingertips at this point.
Absolutely, and it's our responsibility to choose the environment, like the positive environment that you had with your coach, with the athletes in college. I think with content in particular, it's us who chooses the environment we'll place ourselves into, in terms of like what information we want to consume, right? If you want to get inspired, if you want to follow somebody's example, then it's phenomenal. But there are many other examples where that abundance of information is really bad for us, such as binge watching content, swiping through Instagram, and so many more things. I'd love to learn a little bit more about how your career went from that moment when you got the gold medal at the World.
Yeah. So I didn't get a gold medal at the World Championships. I did compete at the World Championships, but then didn't. Yeah, no, that's totally fine. I wish I did. Sorry to let you down. So after I competed there, I continued to progress and get faster, get stronger. Like, I knew now that I was an Olympic hopeful, but I didn't know if it was truly going to be possible.
When was the first moment when you thought, hey, Olympics, that seems to be the biggest thing that there is in the sport? Do you remember the moment, or was it gradual?
No, I do remember the moment. It was of course it is kind of gradual, but I guess I remember kind of the time period where I remember acknowledging it and truthfully feeling it, not just saying it anymore, but being like, I actually believe this is possible now. And that came from, I had a training partner who, the Beijing Olympics, so, there's always a different city. So the Beijing Olympics were in 2008, the London Olympics were in 2012. And in the 2008 Olympics, heading into that, I was still too young. I was still too early in my career. It was unlikely that I was going to make the Olympic Games, but I was starting to get good. And I had a training partner who I would train with day in, day out. And in my mind, I was convinced that in order to make the Olympic Games, you have to have a flawless season. You can never lose a race. You can't get injured. You have to train every single day. Like, you can't have any days off. You can't do whatever. Like, this is the way it has to go if you're going to make the Olympic Games. And in the 2008 Olympics, that training partner friend of mine, he made the Olympics, but he did not have a flawless season. He had moments he was injured. He lost certain races. Like, he wasn't perfect. And he still made the Olympic Games and competed well and did awesome. And so in watching his journey and then seeing him make it, I was like, oh, you don't have to be perfect, and you can pursue this goal, and there can be hiccups along the way. But if you stay committed to this goal and you work really hard, like, it is still possible. And so I was like, oh, I bet you I can make the Olympics in 2012. And so that was now my new goal. My new mission was make the Olympics in 2012. And kept training, did well. And right before the Olympics, I was training my butt off because I wanted this so badly, but I ended up overtraining and ended up getting a stress fracture in my femur. So that's a deterioration of your bone from the inside out that leads to a crack. And your femur is your massive. It feels like, imagine someone like, those like kind of like figurines that are kind of like, they're made not of like a really soft plastic. You can kind of like bend their back like a little bit in half. Like, you can't snap them, but you just bend them. So imagine someone took just your femur, just your thigh, and was bending it like this of your actual bone. That's what it feels like to have a stress fracture. Someone is just like bending your bone constantly, and you're just like, ow, ow, ow.
Are there nerves in our bones?
Stupid question. No nerves in your like. There are nerves actually. There are nerves. They're not vascular. There's no blood vessels down the center of your bones, which is why it makes bones really hard to heal, because there's no blood flow to them to be able to make sure that they like get the healing resources that they need. So that's why bones take so much longer to heal than like soft tissue. There are nerves. It's not as nervy as like your hands or your like anywhere else that would have more soft tissue would be more nerves than your bones.
Do you have to endure a lot of pain as an athlete?
Yes. Like, it depends on your event, and it doesn't have to be. My event specifically happens to create a lot of pain because there's lactic acid is produced when you are running as fast as you can and you're not your body isn't able to process oxygen and create energy to be able to move your muscles. And so what it's doing is inside your muscles, it's actually taking like a sugar molecule, breaking it in half, using this part for energy and throwing this other part to the side. And the part that it's throwing to the side is lactic acid. And so your muscles start bubbling up with this pool of lactic acid, and it is literally an acid. And so it's like your body is flooded in an acid while you are trying to push it as hard as you can. And because of that, there's other physiological response that are triggered. So you're running as hard as you can. You feel like you are poisoning your body because there's acid all over it. It feels like it's so painful. You're trying to process it. Plus, your body is now in a state of, there's a pH balance. We probably all heard of like water that is good for you because it's more basic. Yeah. It has like like a lower pH or higher pH. So when you start creating all that acid, I am throwing off my homeostatic state, the state that is comfortable and calm for my body. I am producing so much acid that my body is like starting to panic because it's trying to adapt to like the new state I'm putting it in. And so the physiological response is now my body wants to throw up because it wants to get rid of all of the acid that's in my stomach because it's like, oh my God, our balance is all off. What should we do here? Okay, the only way I know how to get rid of acid is here. Throw this up over here. And then
which probably doesn't do anything because the acid is not located in our stomachs.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. And then your blood vessels, it knows, oh my God, we're running away from danger, or so it thinks. And so it's giving your blood to your muscles. But then I start losing blood, like literally in my head. So sometimes when I'm running so hard, my eyes would start to get foggy. Like it was like my body was literally shutting down to protect itself. And that is why my event specifically causes so much pain, because of the state I have to push it through to run as hard as I can. Sport doesn't always have to be painful, and it shouldn't always be painful because that's really unhealthy. And there were training days where I had, easier, simpler runs that didn't put me into that state. But certainly it was because of the event I chose to run and was good at. It required a level of pain tolerance that was kind of unreasonable.
And you never doubted that specific sport? You never thought, oh, I can just do sprinting or something else. It might be a little bit less painful.
I mean, I definitely would have considered it, but I think every time I would run like just a 100-meter sprint or a 200-meter sprint, like I wasn't as good. Like my body was really good at handling
jumping over stuff.
Not even just jump, but like it was more about my ability to process that lactic acid. Like I could push myself to that point of pain further than like a lot of people. And that's what made me good.
There is nature, there's nurture. There are like super athletes that are extremely fit. Very few people in the world, they even tried themselves in athletics. It seems like you've tried. In Canada, you had a high school that had the team. In the United States, they have also in high schools and in colleges, they have really, really good coaches. In Europe, that's not the case. In Asia, that's not the case. In Africa, probably also not the case. I feel like it's only in North America where you have this industry of sports where you have actually good people and resources thrown at sports. I might be wrong here. But I feel like there are a lot of people extremely capable. They're just not putting their genes to use. What's your take on that?
I completely agree that there are people in the world who have the capacity to be really good at something, and they just don't know it because they haven't been given the opportunity to show themselves that they are good. Like if I wouldn't have went out for the track team to find hurdles because of that high school teacher, I wouldn't know that I was good at running or good at sprinting. Like I would have never known that. And so I have no doubt there are a ton of people out there who have never been able to show themselves what they are truly capable of. The thing that I might disagree with is the sport of track and field, or athletics as people call it, in Europe and stuff, that isn't as well, that people aren't exposed to the sport. Because I think of the sports that exist in the world, track and field, like of course I think soccer or football is a big one. I think I don't know, soccer and
South
football
America,
is probably
Africa.
one of the biggest one. South America, Africa, Europe, like Canada and US, like that is probably like up there as like one of the highest. Like everyone's been exposed, everyone's tried it, everyone's whatever. But I would also put athletics or track and field up near the top of the sports that have been tried, because everyone has gone for a run. Whether it was like you were forced to by your parent, or you had to run after something, or you, whatever, like everyone's been exposed to track and field or athletics, like I said, as they call it over there. You might not be exposed to, you know, shot put or like hurdles specifically, but everyone has tried running and kind of knows like, do I like running? Do I not like running? Am I good at running? Am I not good at running? Like everyone has a small idea, versus someone might have literally no idea. Like, are you good at beach volleyball? I don't know. I've never touched a volleyball. You know, like it would be more likely that you'd find people who haven't tried those sports over the sport of track and field. Like running, you don't need any equipment. You don't even actually need a track. You just need feet and some like field or, you know, something. And so I would say there are a lot of people who just haven't given themselves the opportunity to like know how truly capable and good they would be at the sport. But my sport, track and field in general, actually has probably some of the most exposure than a lot of other sports.
What I was alluding to, because using that logic, then I've also tried the hot dog eating challenge, and then the swimming. I'm just messing with you, but I've tried a lot of things, and so have a lot of people. But I think the point I want to make is that I do not see those things as a sport or something that I can commit my life to. By running out to a meeting or anything else. And I feel like United States in particular, it has this amazing ecosystem of trainers, of colleges, and the mindset, hey, you can actually be an athlete, you can make a shitload of money if you really try hard. And what it seems like, at least in football in the United States, a lot of kids that are from less privileged backgrounds, they get inspired, and all they want to do is they want to make it. They want to make it as athletes, to get out of where they're at. That's their ambition. And in Latin America, that thing is soccer. I just feel like not only having an inspiration to try out the sport and seeing kind of like what it can lead to, but also having the resources, and that's special.
Yeah, no, you're right. I see what you're saying there. That does make sense. Like having the infrastructure of like, once you do realize, okay, yeah, maybe I do like running, maybe I'm good at it. Now what? Now where do I go? So that makes a lot of sense.
So probably one of the biggest questions that people would ask you is how you got to become an Olympic athlete. What's your journey?
Yeah. So I can't, like, it's going to be tricky. For me, I wasn't good at any sports in high school, got cut from basketball, volleyball, soccer, all the things. And then had a high school teacher see me in gym class, and he's like, you should do track and field. And I was like, no, man, like I already got cut from every team. Like, you don't want me. And ended up going out for the track team because he had encouraged me. And I found hurdles, and I fell in love with the sport, and I happened to be kind of good. And so I kept doing it. And that high school teacher and I stayed coach athlete for the next 8 years until we made the Olympics together, which is kind of unheard of because you don't usually have your high school teacher become your Olympic coach. But this teacher was a varsity coach at the university nearby in Toronto, where I live. And my journey kind of like went from feeling like I wasn't good at sports to then being like, okay, maybe I'm kind of good. And then I started winning some national championships. Then I started being like, okay, maybe this is possible. And I still didn't fully believe it until I had a teammate make the Olympic Games. And I was like, oh, like he's a human being. Like he's not perfect in every way. And so like, maybe I can do that. And so that became the new goal, and the new sight like was set. And then just before the Olympics, I got injured and I sat out for almost an entire year. And then everyone told me that like, there's no way like you'll make it. Like you've never touched Olympic standard, which is that minimum qualifying time you have to hit in order to qualify. And after sitting out for a whole year, I've made it even harder on myself now. And so when I got back to training, I attended my very first practice where I like jogged around the track a few times. And I've been off for so long that I'm like, this feels even weird just to jog. And I had
And for
realized,
professional athletes, does it mean that you do not exercise at all, or you do different types of exercises that are just not running and doing hurdles?
so I wasn't allowed to do any weight bearing activity because my injury was a stress fracture in my femur. So femur is the biggest bone in your body, your massive thigh bone, and a stress fracture is a deterioration of your bone from the inside out that leads to a crack. So I wasn't allowed to do anything that had me like weight bearing on my legs. So we would do stuff like water running, where you go into a pool and you don't touch the ground and you're just like running on the spot in the water. You look like a psychopath, but it's like, it's
I've
not
seen they
weight
train
bearing.
horses like this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what I am. I am a human racehorse. So it makes sense. And it was brutal. I hated it. And it was a way to keep my heart rate up, but it wasn't specific enough related to what I actually do that when I went back to the track, like I was so out of shape, even though I did that water running, because it's just not the same. Like it's nothing like real running. And so, yeah, I was doing no weight bearing. I was allowed to do like core exercises a little bit, but even that, like my motivation was so low from feeling so defeated, I didn't even want to. And so I was honestly like pretty much just like hit a reset button for that whole year off. So when I came back to training and I was just like jogging around being like, oh my God, I can jog. This is so weird. I left the track that day and I ended up getting the word believe tattooed onto my wrist. And I said, when I make the Olympic Games, I'm going to put the Olympic rings underneath here. And no one believed me and everyone thought I was insane. And I don't suggest that people tattoo themselves of their goals, but I knew I needed a word or a phrase or a quote to remind me of everything I had just overcome and remind myself that like I had a strength inside and I needed to just keep like choosing to get back up and like putting one foot in front of the other. And so, you know, anyone listening here, it's like, what is that word for you? Mine was believe. What's your word? And it can be used to kind of bump into it. And like, you know, if you write it down, paste it somewhere you can see it, then it might trigger you on a day where you do feel defeated and deflated and unmotivated to just push forward for like that one more step or one more day. And that served me so well because 6 months later, after getting that tattoo, after just getting back, I had to get back to who I was and then improve a whole second in order to qualify.
And that period of 6 months of getting from no running at all for a year or running in the pool to qualifying or to coming closer to your personal record time, I would imagine. How did that time look like and feel like? Because in the beginning, most likely you probably weren't performing at the same level as when you were injured. Can you tell me about those 6 months and what made you feel like you could keep going, you could keep training and keep becoming stronger?
Yeah. So when I first got back, I was getting beat by people I should have never been getting beat by, like just getting destroyed. And it felt so silly to tell people like, yeah, I'm trying to make the Olympic Games, when it's like, I'm getting beat by like Susie over here and Susie is not that good, you know? And so
it sounds like you're pretty competitive.
Yeah, right. Just a little. But it felt kind of dumb to tell people I'm trying to make the Olympic Games because like I was just not good at all. And so my coach had put together like a very thoughtful plan on the way we were going to kind of like lay brick by brick and just keep building. That would allow me to tap into the potential that, you know, I had still been training for years before that. And so he's like, we just need to like turn everything back on. And you feel gross and terrible right now, but like, it's just a matter of reigniting and turning those dials back on because it's in you. We just need to like reinvigorate that. And so I was pretty pretty terrible. And then built a little bit more and then a little bit more. And then suddenly like, I'm like, okay, like maybe this is possible. Maybe this is something I could actually accomplish. And, you know, I like lose my first race and then I do okay in my next race. And then I'm getting better and better and better until like I'm starting to win races and I'm starting to hit times that I'm like, oh my gosh, like if I go and win the Olympic trials, I can make the Olympic Games. And so it became this kind of like process of just looking at how much I had grown over the thing that we all do quite regularly and looking at how far I still need to go. Because by looking back at my workout logs and looking at how far I had grown, it gave me motivation. It gave me confidence that like, okay, if I've come this far in this amount of time, well, then I don't have to be worried because I can keep developing at that rate and potentially even develop at a faster rate over time, which will allow me to get to that thing. So like keep doing what I'm doing and don't worry about where that goal is in the future.
Do you feel like because you were tracking your workouts and seeing incremental improvements, you saw that, hey, I'm not actually being stagnant, I'm improving slowly, and given that trajectory, I can likely make it to the Olympic trials? Or what was it, the data that helped you kind of see that you're advancing?
100%. It's like one of the biggest things people ask me all the time is like, well, how do you build self-belief? Like, what is a tangible thing I can do to build my confidence and self-belief? And I'll always respond with like, journal, write it down. Because then, I'm lucky that I was tracking, like you said, like almost like data, like facts, numbers. Like it's an easy comparison to show myself like I ran this time before and now I'm running this time. And so it could show me that progress. And like when I would tell myself a story of like, oh my God, I'm never going to make it. And like, I'm so terrible because I had a bad week. Well, I can look back and be like, oh, well, look, I had 4 good weeks. Sure, this week wasn't good, but that doesn't mean that I'm destined for doom, because the story I think is that I've been terrible this whole time is wrong, because I've actually been improving for 4 weeks. I had 1 bad week. And so it allows you to rewrite the story in your head. And for someone who has something like maybe a little less tangible, it's not necessarily times and numbers, but you might say to yourself like, oh my gosh, like I'm not growing at work at all. Like no one's acknowledging me, or like I haven't developed any new skills. And you might genuinely feel that, and it might actually be happening for like 1 month. But if you've written down what's happened over the course of the year, you might be like, oh, actually, look, I did develop that, and I did get to do this thing, and I did work on that cool project. And so you can override that voice of self-doubt and the story in your head that tells you you're not good enough and you're not developing and you'll never go anywhere, because you have real facts to show you really have taken steps forward.
And Sarah, can you tell me about the Olympic trials themselves?
So that was an insane day where I knew I wanted to make the Olympic Games so bad. Olympic trials were a crazy day. I knew that if I won the race that I could make the Olympics. And so I was just like so scared of, you hit a hurdle, you have 1 bad step, like something happens, like who knows, like then it all evaporates in front of your eyes. And so I was just, so nervous. Like I honestly probably didn't sleep for weeks leading into it, just so scared. And even on the day of the race, like I remember waking up with like insane butterflies. I must have woke up at like 4 a.m., even though I didn't race until like 1 p.m. because I was just so scared. And there was another girl who had a possibility of beating me. Like her and I were kind of back and forth through the season. Uh-huh. And there was some like stupid, silly drama, and people were kind of picking sides on Instagram or on Twitter. Actually, like in 2012, it was more Twitter. And, she was very outspoken, and it was like this kind of like put into like this weird, like, why is there all this drama? There's enough stress on this race already. And now there's like this new, like social drama around the whole thing of like, are you team this girl or team Sarah? And so everyone knew it. And so there was like this extra spotlight on our race, because people wanted to see like, who's going to win of these like 2 competitive spirits. And it added to the pressure and stress, because I felt like I had to win or I was going to like, lose this battle and miss the Olympic Games. And it basically was because she was allowed to stretch the rules. Like when you transfer, how like in American schools in NCAA, if you play for one team, let's say you play for Syracuse and you pick up and you leave and you try to go play for North Carolina, you have to sit out a year. You can't just transfer year over year from school to school. there's a buffer period that you have to kind of invest time, or people would just jump around. And it's to ensure that like when you make a choice, like you're supposed to be able to, like,
Yeah, you commit to
you
it.
can't just like follow exactly. And so that's a rule that exists in the NCAA, and that also exists when you compete for like national countries. So she was previously competing for America, and then she was like, actually, I'm going to try to compete for Canada. And she had competed for the US the previous year. So she should have had to sit out a buffer year before she chose to switch. But for whatever reason, our Canadian system just was like, that's fine, you can come. They didn't make her follow the rules, which I thought was like kind of silly, because it's like, that is a rule. Like, you know, these rules, if I decided like, no, I want everyone to start the race again, like I didn't get a good start, that they're gonna be like, no, the rule is when the gun goes off, you have to start. I don't care if you didn't want to start, you have to start when the gun goes off. And so it's just like this weird gray area of like, why did we let her jump ship like that and not follow the rule?
Mm-hmm.
And so some people were kind of like, well, she should be allowed to do that anyways. Some people were like, no, it's a rule for a reason. And so this extra drama was the thing surrounding the race. And I remember I had my practice the day before the final, and our like national broadcasting station like came up to me and was like, so how do you feel about this drama happening? And it's like, why are we talking about that? Like we should be talking about the Olympics right now. Like that's what we want to be doing. And so, yeah, it was just a weird day because I felt like this double whammy pressure. And my coach and I had gone over like a perfect execution of a race plan of like, I do this at hurdle 1, I think this at hurdle 3. Like I felt like I was so well tuned and refined at exactly what I needed to do at every single stage, that all I was thinking about was, what did I need to do at my first checkpoint, which would have been like, what do I need to do at hurdle 1 that will now set me up for the rest of the race? Because I know the domino effect. As soon as I like, you know, begin the maze of like, go to this one, that's like, okay, now I know the path. Go here, go here, go here, go here. And so I was like, let me just set myself up for success. Just focus on the first step. And
did it feel scary at all? Because if you do not think kind of too far ahead, which can be very counterproductive, because you're no longer focusing on one little thing, you're trying to understand the whole big picture, which is a lot of the times not very effective. Does that feel scary in your mind, that you only know what's going to happen in the next 10 seconds as opposed to during the entire race as you're executing the strategy?
Oh, 100%. It's petrifying because you can't predict, and you're trying not to predict like purposefully. And you have to like put an immense amount of trust that the training you've done, the visualization, the like going over that perfect race plan time and time again will serve you when you need it. And I spent tons of time going over the big picture, holistic race plan. And so I had to trust that I had put in enough time when I did that, like in training, in my warm up, in, you know, when I was waiting on the sidelines to get called out to the track, that I had done enough of that then, that all I needed to do was focus on the one step. But you're absolutely right that there's something in the back of your brain that's constantly like, but what if you screwed up? Like, what if you're not doing it right? Like, where's the finish line, you know? And so it's so stressful. It really, really is. And that's where, you know, it's wild to watch the race back and see me go through and like be running this race. And I'm actually not winning for about 2/3 of the race. And I was executing my race plan. I wasn't trying to do what the other girls were doing. I was just doing what I knew I needed to do. And that required a certain pacing and a certain like stride pattern. And so that race plan didn't have me winning 2/3 of the race. But for the last third of the race, you watch me just pull ahead. And because I was running at a percentage that allowed me to remain so steady and almost like, you know, you're not actually accelerating because your body is shutting down from pure pain and brutal lactic acid, but it feels like you are accelerating because the rest of the squad is like falling behind. And so by being focused in on what I needed to do, it allowed me to come out, and I end up winning the Olympic trials and going to the London Olympic Games. And it was just like this insane release of like all that pressure, all of that stress that I had felt for like months and months leading into it. And I remember that when I finished the race and like, I cool down and I'm like so excited and I get to go on the podium, I get my medal, my family's super excited. They're in the stands and like, I'm just like on cloud nine. But it's like so much of my life had been focused on this moment and this thing. And I needed this thing so badly that now I had it. And it was just like, we went out to eat pizza because I hadn't eaten anything bad for me in like so long. And I remember sitting at the table at this restaurant, like eating pizza, being like, so this is it? Like, this is what's on the other side? Like, just like normal life and pizza? Like, it felt so strange because it was just like, not like everything changed and nothing changed at the same time.
And eating pizza and realizing that, hey, it's probably another day, but also that was just the trials, right? This was the qualification. Then you need to do the actual Olympic race.
Yeah.
Which how long does the preparation take to get to the Olympics once you've been qualified, and how did the journey look like?
So it's different for every single sport. Some sports, they qualify a whole year before. And so they know for a whole year they're going to the Olympics. For track and field, because we are racehorses, they want us to be fast. They need to confirm that we're fast when they need us to be fast. So we don't qualify until like 30 days before the Olympics.
Whoa, no way. 30 days.
30 days.
I'll be freaking out if I get it. If I get into the Olympics, I was like, damn, now I have to actually go do this thing. And then you become probably somewhat famous in the community, in the country, everybody's watching. So I'd be freaking
crazy.
out. And you were just eating pizza. It seems like, okay, that's it. You were relaxed.
Well, only for that one day, it was like, you reach for this point, I ate pizza. I like did whatever I wanted for like 24 hours. And then you're back into, okay, now focus back because we have to, in 30 days, compete at the Olympics. So it was crazy because this happens, I qualify. And then I only have maybe 2 weeks more of training with my coach and here back still at home in Canada. And then like 2 weeks later, I'm getting on a plane to go fly to the UK to get ready for the Olympics. So then, leading into the Olympics, I'm in Germany at a training camp and we're just focused on like preparing for this big moment. And so honestly, the lead in from Olympic trials to Olympics, like just flew by. It was almost nothing. It was just like, okay, so now like keep this up, like keep, hold on to your fitness, like make sure your race plan is good, but you can't really do much more like building of your performance because there's not a lot of time. Because now 2 weeks, like not even like 1 week after Olympic trials, you're just continuing to ride what's called a taper. So it's where like your training might be really heavy and lots of volume, and then you taper down because you reduce your training level. So your body's way less tired, but you still have the same strength and aerobic capacity and all of these things because you've pushed the limits right before. But now you're rested. And so it allows you to perform at this like crazy level because you have the benefit of the training, but your body's like 0% tired because you've just been doing easy workouts for like a few weeks leading into.
And do you cycle? Do you cycle from the tempering period to performing at the peak level? And how long are the cycles?
All year you're going through different cycles and every coach does it differently. My coach and I, we worked on 4-week cycles, but we wouldn't taper every cycle because tapering is like a severe like reduction in like, okay, we are getting ready for your big performance. So you really only taper like 1 or 2 times. I would say 2 times a year that you really taper. But you would have like low impact weeks or like kind of like you'd ride this roller coaster of 4-week cycles where you push really hard, push really hard, push really hard. Okay, now reap the benefits, recover, get ready for your next phase. Okay, push really hard, go again. And then you're super compensating. So if your first wave goes like this, now your next wave, because you've reaped the benefit of the first wave, you can actually push even further for the second wave. And then you recover. And so then you're climbing this staircase as you're going through. And that's the principle of progressive overload in training. But then when it comes down to like, so now you're way up here at the top of your, staircase that you've done. And now you get ready for the Olympics. So you taper so hard, like all the way down to the floor. And then you have that one like stellar performance, which ideally like skyrockets you beyond like something you've never seen yourself do.
Do you do really easy runs before the Olympics?
Yeah, so you do really high intensity, but you might only do one or two of them. So I might do so I run the 400-meter hurdles. I might do 2 runs at 150 meters. So 30% of my race, and just do them at race pace, like really fast, really refined, really like specific to what I'm going to do, but only 30%. And so I just kind of like lock in that first section, but you're not going into deficit. You're
How
just
long does
keeping
it take
everything turned on.
How long does it take to run 150-meter hurdles?
Oh gosh, my 150 would be, I want to say we'd be like, at this point, like 15 seconds.
15 seconds. So you do 2. So in 30 seconds, your whole workout would be done.
No, I lied. It'll be 19 seconds.
19 seconds. All right. So you have to do 2 races, 150 meters each, as you're preparing for the Olympics. It sounds like your workout is 40 seconds long. Is that right or not really?
Pretty much. Like, honestly, like your warm up is an hour. You're doing drills, you're refining things, you're doing whatever. You do all of that for like an hour. Then you do a 19-second run, like an 18.5, let's say, like whatever it ends up being. Then you would sit down for 10 minutes. You would rest because you need to completely come back from, well, it sounds crazy that 19 seconds isn't a lot. Like when you're running at that highest level, like you can still bring your body, like it's using a lot of energy just to do that at such a high intensity. So then I would have to recover and sit for 10 minutes and then go back to the starting blocks and do the same 18 to 19 second run. And then I would do medicine, those heavy medicine balls, toss that around, and you would do different stuff and like do your strength. You go to the gym, lift some stuff, in 90 minutes, your workout's done.
So you have 30 days before the Olympics. You work out for an hour and a half a day compared to how long you usually work out, which is how long?
4 hours on 4 hours days. Yeah.
All right. And you said you traveled to Germany to train, right? And then the Olympics were in the United Kingdom. Can you tell me about what's going on in your head as you are doing this? Are you put together with other Olympic athletes and you're all like as a team, you're being coordinated all together? What is the behind the scenes like for you in this 30-day period? And again, 30 days, it's like my whole life, can change, like this moment in just 30 days. I cannot imagine what you have been going through internally. Can you tell me about how you were feeling?
So in that 30 days, like once you make it, like I said, I'm living kind of a normal life for the 2 weeks afterwards because I've qualified, but nothing has really happened yet. And my coach and I are just doing the last little tweaks to try to get a little bit better and a little bit better. And then I fly to Germany. And when I get to Germany, it's all of the track and field team together, all of the Canadian athletes. And we're at basically like a training camp. And we're basically like, all they want you to focus on is your race and performing and taking care of your body. So we're basically being like babysat. Like we have coaches that are there. We have physiotherapists. We have chefs cooking our meals. Like everything is taken care of because all they want us to focus on is like sleeping, training, and eating. That's it. So like anything I need, like I don't have to think about, like they're taking care of all of it. So you're basically just being babysat. Like you have one job and that's it. And that's all you're doing. So I would like wake up, we would get cooked for, I might go back, take a nap, then I'd go to training, like do my quick, hard, fast workout, be really focused, really committed to that. And then in the afternoon, you'd like hang out with the other athletes and like, just like, you're just recovering. So you're just like kind of laying around, like you might play some card games, like you're doing almost nothing. A summer camp that has to be like really even keeled. Like you're trying to keep your emotions in check. You're trying to like reserve every last bit of energy you have to prepare for this like big moment. And then a week out from the start of the Olympics, they fly us to the UK. And now we're in the Olympic Village. And it's crazy because it's hard to control your emotions because now it's like, oh my God, I'm here. And like, you're seeing the buzz and there's all this hype and you walk into the Olympic Stadium for the first time for your practice. And you're like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I'm here. But you're like, calm down. Just a normal day. Like not until it's over can I like appreciate that I'm here. Like I just need to focus on the job I'm here to do. And so at the Olympic Village, there's like, again, it's like you focus on eating, sleeping, and staying calm. And so you live in an apartment building, and every country has their own apartment building, and all the different sports from that country live in this apartment. And so there might be, field hockey players, track athletes, swimmers, rugby players, like everyone's in that same building from your country. And then you're like next door to this other country. And so when you leave your buildings to go to the dining hall, you mix and mingle and you meet all these different people, and like you have these like amazing conversations to like learn everyone's story. Like, how did you get here? What did you have to deal with? Like, what are you looking forward to? Like, and you just get to create some like really amazing friendships and bonds that, I've kept in touch with many people. And like when I was in different countries in Europe for races, like I went and visited some of these people that I met at the Olympic Games.
These people are world-class athletes, and I feel like being surrounded with world-class athletes, it just puts you in another room where people might be better than you. Or did you feel pressured? Did you feel like the spirit was friendly? How did it feel like? Was it secretive at all as for how people are preparing, how people are feeling?
I wasn't talking to any of my like direct competitors. Like I wasn't like hanging out with the other like country 400-meter hurdlers, but it's like you meet people from other sports, and then it's kind of like there's no butting heads, because it's like, oh, like I'm excited for you because I don't have to compete against you, and like you're excited for me because you don't care, like like it doesn't affect you in any way if I do well. So it makes it easy to just like support one another, because you're not actually like at a loss if the other person does better or something. And like you said, like it helps like build you up. Like everyone's so encouraging of one another. Like, and even, some of the athletes that were in my race, it's like, they're only going to help me do better by them performing their best. Like I'm going to want to beat them, which is going to push me further and allow me to be an even better version of myself. And certainly for me, like I knew once I made the Olympics, like I probably wasn't going to win a medal. Like I wasn't close enough to that time. And so for me, it was really about like, okay, like I'm probably not going to win a medal, but like, what can I do? Like, how far can I go? And so that's what it became about for me. And by people being fast and bringing their A game was only going to help me pull more out of myself. And so I was kind of like all for it. Like, let's do this. Like, yeah.
You mentioned something like I probably am not going to win the medal. Is this the mindset that you were walking in with, or was it that their times, the times of the previous Olympic Games were far from your best performance, that you didn't feel like it was possible? How did that statement or belief come?
Mm-hmm. Of like around the world, like it's like 48 to 50 athletes make the Olympic Games in your event. And so I knew that I was like ranked 30th or something crazy, like really far down the list. And if I know in track and field, like milliseconds matter, right? Like to improve a half a second is a big deal. To improve a whole second is like unheard of. Like to do 2 seconds would be like pretty much like unheard of. And so I was like 2 seconds away from what other girls were running at the very top, like the top 5. And like, I had no reason to think that I would be able to run. I had no signs in training and no signs in whatever. And look, I had no signs that I would even make the Olympics, yet I still got the word believe tattooed on my wrist. And so I wasn't saying, this isn't possible, and so I'm not even going to try. But it was it allowed me to enter into my experience of the Olympics with less fear, because it wasn't like I was expected to win a medal. And so, I was open to the idea, like, who knows what happens? Like, maybe I do, but I don't feel a lot of pressure right now, because let's just see what I can do, because I'm ready to show up and give it everything I have. And you know what? Maybe I blow my own mind and I run 53 seconds. I have no reason to think that I will, but I'm here to show up and do my best. And that's what's exciting. And so it wasn't like I won't win a medal. There's no point in trying. It's unlikely I'm going to win a medal. So let's just make sure I give it everything and see where the chips fall. And because I should have never made the Olympics to begin with. Yet I was kind of like well, no, like, it doesn't matter that it's impossible. Like, I think I can still, I'll see what happens. Like, I'll let you know. And then when I entered into the Olympics, it was kind of like a similar thing where it's like, look, I don't know, but let's go see where this goes. And it allowed me to just feel a little less pressure.
Becoming an Olympic athlete is very impressive, and massive congrats to you for having made it and having represented your country. That's just stellar. And I also love the mindset of the mindset that you had. Hey, let me do my best. And it feels like the pressure was a little bit off because you were comfortable with whatever came, right? So you talked about the last 7 days before the trials, you not being able to sleep. Can you tell me the 7 days or a few days before the actual Olympic race?
Yeah. I mean, because I was in this new environment at the Olympics, like, I feel like I was almost a little bit distracted and starstruck by, the other athletes I got to be around. And it was almost like the novelty of the experience helped keep my brain a bit more distracted of like, let's explore what's over here. Let's walk around the Olympic Village. Oh, I'm in a new city. Like, that's cool. Like, what's there around? Like, I got to meet new people. Like, when I would go to the cafeteria and sit in and talk to other athletes. And so while I was afraid and scared and nervous, excited for getting out there on the start line, there was enough keeping my brain busy in the Olympic Village that I wasn't as overwhelmed. And I think, again, because I had less pressure on myself, it allowed me to fall asleep a little easier. And I would still wake up with insane butterflies, like, oh God, the day is coming, soon I'm going to have to race. The time has come, everything is coming to a head here. And I would have that feeling of oh God, but it was just a different sense of, this will never be a wasted opportunity because I've made it this far, which has already blown my own mind. And so that part was, I think, enough to give me some sense of calm in moments where I might have gotten too riled up versus before Olympic trials. I was like, if I don't make this will feel like a waste of my time, even though it never will be. And it wouldn't have been 100%. It would have never been a waste of my time. But I was so scared of it being that way versus I just maybe I grew or learned that lesson. And so once I showed up at the Olympics, I was like, this won't be a waste. I've already shown myself so much by getting here. And so let's see what we can do. So those 7 days were a very different experience from the 7 days leading into the Olympic trials.
Which is kind of surprising because the caliber of the event is very different.
Yeah, totally. But it's also the fact that I wasn't in my home country anymore. I had all these new friends. There was so much distraction that it shows you how important it is to keep your brain stimulated and busy to almost I think the only thing that mattered at Olympic trials or leading was winning versus there were so many other things that mattered as part of my Olympic experience. It mattered to me to get to know people. It mattered to me to explore. It mattered to me to absorb the opportunity. And I think that's why we talk, there's so many different things about really diversifying who you are. You are not just an entrepreneur. You are also a friend and a podcaster and a whatever, because if you're just one thing, then one thing goes wrong in that one bucket that you would define yourself as, and you feel like a failure. You feel like everything's stripped away from you. But if you diversified who you are, then even if one thing's going bad over here, you still feel stable and healthy because you have so much more. And I think I was only defined by winning at Olympic trials versus at the Olympics, I had this new diversified outlook of there's so many more things that matter right now than just winning.
Can you tell me about the race itself, and after, I'd love to know about your transition as an athlete to what you're doing right now as a public speaker, because you talked about diversifying, and it feels like a lot of the times athletes, they have a little bit of an identity crisis after do their race or they perform at the peak level. They put themselves in one narrow lane that they've been pursuing most of their life. So first of all, of course, the race itself, and then how the rest of your journey as an athlete started unraveling.
So the race itself was crazy because I remember walking into the stadium, and my partner at the time was in the stands, and he said when he saw me walk in, like I was just looking down, like I was just walking into the stadium looking down, and there's 80,000 people in the stands, and he's like, I mean, you worked so hard for this moment, like why didn't you look up when you were like walking into the stadium? And I was like, I couldn't. Like if I looked up, I felt like it would have brought me out of my focus. And so what I needed to do was just be like, I am here to do a job. Like I need to get into my starting blocks. While there are 80,000 people watching, this is still a 400-meter track with 10 hurdles, and I have starting blocks in the same spot. Like I'm doing the same thing I always do, just with a big environment around me. And so I had to try.
Well, the whole world is watching more than that, right? Because it's televised.
Exactly. It's certainly. And so I was really just trying to focus in on the like do the job. And when the gun went off, the crowd, I had a British girl in my heat, which is like the qualifying rounds. And so when the gun went off, the crowd like erupted in cheer. Like in the most important races of my life, I've been able to just like focus in and drown out all noise. But the Olympic Stadium, when the gun went off and I came out of the box, I was like, that's a lot of noise. Like it was crazy. Like it consumed you. And I start running the race, and I was so nervous and so scared that I came out so fast and like was completely off my race plan. Like I should have never been running at the pace I was running at. And so if you watch the race back, for half of the race, I'm winning. Now let's remember that I'm ranked like 30th in the race, and I am winning the Olympics for half of the race. Yeah. It was so silly. But because I had pushed my body so hard in the first half, oh my God, I was like, I am dying as I came home in the final straightaway. But I knew I just really wanted to, like I said, like I really wanted to push myself harder than I've ever pushed before. Like I wanted to show myself that like I wasn't just going to come and run one race. I wanted to like go another step forward. Like, could I be a semi-finalist? And so then as we're coming down the home stretch, it's me and that British athlete that I mentioned was in the race. So the crowd is going insane because we're fighting like shoulder for shoulder, and we're coming over the final hurdle, and a photographer caught this like epic shot above for like bird's eye view, and along the straightaway of all the lanes of the track, they had painted the Olympic rings on the base of the track. And so her and I are coming over the last final hurdle. So we're flying above like this over our hurdles, and there's an aerial shot of the two of us side by side jumping over our hurdles with the Olympic rings like on the floor underneath us. And it looks sick. Like it's such a good picture. And I remember that moment because the crowd was going insane because they were like fighting for her to beat me. But in my head, I was like, I'm just going to pretend that's for me. Like they want me to win. And so we're fighting. We lean at the line. And in the end, we both qualify for the second round. And so after not being able to, like, I wasn't supposed to make the Olympic Games. And now I didn't just make it, but I made it into the semifinals and became one of the youngest competitors in the field. And it was wild. Like the next day, it's a very similar experience where like I look down, I was there to do a job, I run the race, and I honestly was so emotionally drained from the previous day that I felt like every nerve just wasn't firing. Every muscle was just like giving up. Like I was so exhausted from the hype and this like crazy, wild experience that I had just gone through. Plus I had pushed my body so hard the day before that I didn't have enough. And so I ended up running an okay race. It's not great. It's not terrible, but it doesn't get me any further. And so I finished as a semifinalist, and After I finished that race, I like walked off to the side, and before, there's a whole slew of like media. There's a bunch of media that they're all there to like put the camera in your face and talk to you. And I didn't go into the media like ramp that you go back and you like zigzag along. I just sat on the track and for the first time, like looked up and just appreciated of like, holy shit, I'm here and I did this. And it was just so surreal. Like, this is my real life. Like, this is crazy. And so that was the Olympics. Now, following the Olympics, I continued to train. Eventually, I'm now favored to win a medal at the next Olympics in 2016 because I've improved, I've gotten faster and stronger. And right before the Olympics, I end up tearing my hamstring and I can't race and like don't end up qualifying. And I didn't know what to do because the media, like I had clothing lines. I was on like every Bristol board in our city. Like I was supposed to be a medalist. And then I get hurt and I'm useless, I feel. And so in that year off, I questioned everything and like really had to take some time to reflect. And I realized that I believed in myself more strongly after not making the Olympics, even more so than when I did. And I really felt like that was because you don't build self-belief through achievements, through getting stuff. You build self-belief through action. Because I still stood on the start line of the 2016 Olympic trials that 4 years later, and I still tried to make it. After not training and having a hole in my hamstring, I still started the race and tried to make it come true. And so that showed me a strength inside that I didn't know that I had. And so I was like, okay, if you don't build self-belief through achievements, you build it through action. How can I help other people build self-belief through action? And so that's when I founded the Believe Initiative, which goes into companies and schools and talks with people about how do you build resilience and self-belief. And that helped me redefine myself. That gave me an opportunity to take all the lessons I've learned from my 15 years in Olympic sport and apply it to help other people build resilience in themselves, and then teach like managers, coaches, teachers, how they can build resilience in their colleagues, employees. And that's, made every obstacle I felt like, everything I dealt with, it's made it all worth it because it has a place and it has a purpose now. And so that's the biggest thing I think for anyone is take what you've learned, take your experience and find a purpose for it. Like find a way to use it to help someone else, to create something, to build a business out of it, to whatever. Like take your experience, your shortcomings, your successes, and find a purpose. And that's what's allowed me to transition out of sport and feel really confident and comfortable that, I'm Sarah Wells, the Olympian forever, but I'm also Sarah Wells, the speaker. I'm Sarah Wells, the motivator. I'm Sarah Wells, the content creator. And that makes me excited for what's to come.
And Sarah, you mentioned find the purpose and take actions. How do you recommend people to find purpose who are feeling a little lost or haven't experienced feeling so inspired to wake up every day to work at something?
I think that you want to make sure that you are exposing yourself to as many new opportunities as possible. If you don't feel like you know what your passion or purpose or anything is, have conversations with different types of people because they'll open up your mind. They'll encourage you to think differently. They'll allow you to see something in a light you never did before. Go find new experiences, like whether that's trying a new course, like actually physically going somewhere to do something different, because that will maybe force you to use your skills and thoughts to get a job done or to like complete something. And suddenly we'll show you like, oh, I know how I could solve this problem using what I know from my experience. And so the more you can expose yourself to new people, new places, new things, new opportunities, the more you'll discover what you like and what you don't like. And I think something people are really afraid of doing is, well, I don't know what my passion is. And so they spend a lot of time trying to figure out what is the actual thing. But it's like, it's a positive step forward is if you try something and you find out it's not a thing, that is a thing. And so that's a big thing that I think we need to all learn is when we are able to actually eliminate something as not our purpose, that is helping you take a step towards what it is. And instead we get so caught up in trying to think our way through what is our purpose? And so I encourage lots of conversations, lots of activities, all the stuff.
I love it. I love it. And that's my take as well. Experimentation, learning about yourself and learning what you love through experimentation. Sarah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your magnificent story. You are just a stellar athlete. I love your mindset. I love what you're doing also with the Believe Initiative. How can people find out a little bit more about you, follow you, and support you?
So you can follow me, Sarah Wells. I'm Sarah Wells 400mh on Instagram, Twitter, whatever, which I really regret because it's so long, but Sarah Wells 400mh. And then if you want to check me out, I'm sarahwells.ca on my website there, or Believe Initiative is believeinitiative.com. So feel free to reach out if there's questions that you have after you listen to this. Happy to answer them. So thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on.